Hello, I'm Penny Thornton and I'm talking astrology. On this video, I'm talking about the full moon in Aries on the 20th of October at 14:58 UTC. That's GMT in old money. And in fact, when I show you the full moon in terms of how it looks in a horoscope, I've actually set it for London, the center of GMT. Again, not because that's the country I come from, but simply because it's nice and easy to see. It's very clear to see what the main dynamics are of this full moon. And of course, when I do my videos, I want to show you the whole picture, because that's what makes a big difference from one full moon in Aries to another full moon in Aries. It's the connections that full moon is making to other planets. And of course, each full moon is a statement of the times, because in general, all full moons are times of, well, I like to say that they bring things together, things culminate on a full moon. But of course, that statement has a kind of manifold meaning, because sometimes, things come together and we complete at a full moon, but it's not always in a joyful way. Sometimes things have really reached a tipping point, and wherever our full moon is in our own natal charts, whether you're a Leo, whether you're a Capricorn, whatever, we feel the full moon. And certainly if we're interested in astrology and we're bothering to think about this great big cosmos of ours that we're interacting with, then I think we're much more likely to notice the effects of a full moon and be able to use them for their good purposes, and also to modify behaviors that tend to happen on a full moon, because we're always a little bit more strung out. It's like the full moons pull on the tides of our emotions are very full. And so we tend to overreact difficulties or upsets. But of course, if we're happy, then my goodness, we're so happy. It's unbelievable. The full moon really exaggerates our feelings. Now, this full moon is also known as a harvest moon, and it comes really at a time when, in many ways, the harvest is certainly gathered. We think of that in September. But it is, in a way, we've just had Thanksgiving in Canada, and we are none too far away from Thanksgiving in the United States. So this full moon is a kind of emblem of that sense of a full harvest, of reaping a harvest. Now, one of the things that happens with a full moon is that it ends a 6-month cycle, because the cycle began on the new moon in Aries. Now, that new moon in Aries took place on the 12th of April. So if you want to think about things that were happening at that time, and certainly if you began anything, especially, I suppose, if you're an Aries, if you began a new project or you began a new relationship, then 6 months down the line, we're taking another look at that. Is it everything it promised, or is it lacking its promise? So we make some decisions around the time of the full moon that either allow us to move on or to a new stage of a project or an association, or we say, what, I can't have everything. There's a lot going on in my life. Maybe this is something that needs to be placed in the sidings. To refresh your memory, around the 12th of April this year, Prince Philip died a couple of days before that. And of course, the funeral was also held in April. And this was also a time when Joe Biden announced the end of America's longest war. In other words, picking up on Trump's agreement to take all troops out of Afghanistan. Well, ostensibly that was meant to happen in May, but when Biden made this announcement, of course, it was set for some time around 9/11. So those two things might help you place or get a sense of place for what you were doing around this particular time. And I think it's quite interesting. We've had a very royal year in terms of the British royal family. There have been a lot of events to do with the family, not least Prince Philip's funeral. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if this full moon, the end of the new moon, full moon cycle, April to October, doesn't also bring us some very important royal developments. And of course, we know we've got quite a lot of those festering away in there, whether it's the family upsets with the Sussexes and the rest of the family, or whether it's Prince Andrew and the disgrace that threatens to overwhelm the monarchy. So I would think that this full moon on the 20th of October, around that time, is going to give us quite a lot to think about in royal terms. So let's take a look at what this full moon looks like in a horoscope. Now, as you will see, I mean, probably a little used to seeing my horoscopes by now, where there is a big red triangle that I've drawn in, you'll see the Sun and Mars together in a kind of 12 o'clock position. They're right at the opposite point to the moon, which obviously looks like a moon in Aries. But the important thing is that this full moon is squared by Pluto. In other words, we've got a big giant full moon squaring Pluto. So I think the 20th of October is going to be a pretty intense day. I suspect there'll be a lot of arguments and upsets and all sorts of things that threaten to destabilize things. And we could be looking out there on the world stage, whatever's going on with China and Australia, or we could be just looking at a period of time where it seems there are a huge amount of protests and upsets and people getting up in arms about this and that. Now, I want to set this full moon in the context of two things. It's a kind of sandwich. The full moon comes between a Sun-Pluto square, which happens on the 17th, and a Mars-Pluto square, which happens on the 22nd. And we can sort of see that sandwich, in effect, in our T-square there. But the exact moments when that happens are where we're really interested in, and that will be a full moon day, and at some point the moon will pick up the square to Pluto exactly. And when we think about what we're doing on that particular day, it's in advance for us, so it might be a good thing to pop in our notebooks or our phones, however we leave messages to ourselves, not to take on anyone bigger and better than us. And perhaps what we can do is make a huge effort to finish something. Let's not forget that whole idea of completion, which comes with a full moon. In fact, let me talk about the full moon a little bit more as well, because it's an interesting phenomenon, the full moon, because at one end it is about this idea of completion and closure, which shuts things and finishes them, which can be a happy ending, or it can be something a little bit more not so happy. And then we can also look at the idea of separation, you know, the sun and the moon at their furthest distance, yet that also gives us a feeling of coming together because they are, you know, sun opposition moon, they're on the same axis. And astrology is full of polarities. We've always got one thing, and at the opposite end, we've got another. And of course, they are always united by a common theme. A polarity is just that. It's one thing and opposite ends it's the opposite extreme. So I think we need to think of that in terms of this period of time, the 20th of October. I've already mentioned the idea that our emotions tend to be at extremes. We're either extremely happy or extremely stressed. And by just remembering this and working with the astrology, bringing the astrology into our lives in a healthy way, then we manage our lives much, much better. But this polarity, certainly, when we think about the Libra-Aries axis, what is that axis all about? Well, Aries is the big me, the big I am. It's about independence and taking a pioneering route. And we look at the opposite side of the zodiac to Libra, and we get the we get us, we get how people work together, how we mediate between warring factions, how we compromise, how we consider things before we take action. That's the polarity here that we're looking at. Now, if I look at it from the perspective of the signs, because I know how much you'd like me to do this, what I would say is that if we come to Aries, first of all, you are an Aries. And every time the moon is in Aries, as it is every month, you get a kind of Aries boost. In other words, it's the solar and the lunar, the outer and the inner come together. They form a unit. So it's a kind of empowering moment. And that's just in general. So we think back to that new moon in Aries on the 12th of April, and we think, what empowered you at that time? Empowered you to initiate something, to begin it, for other things to come into your life that were new, that you wanted to take hold of and, you know, continue to build on them. So this full moon in Aries says, how did that go? But relationships are in there. Of course, the moon is in your sign, so it's all very subjective and personal. That's how you feel about things. It's all about you. And then the opposite side, we've got the sun in Libra. And you, in a way, it's that tug between how much independence you want and how much you believe in yourself and how much you want to share with others, share your life maybe, but also look to others, their needs and opinions, and how you can balance that with your own. That really is the message for Aries. So when we look at Libra, the opposite sign, we're still on the relationship axis. This time the sun is in your sign, the first house. You know, this is a big solar period for you. You're getting all your ducks in a row, lots of things taking place. And here's the moon in the 7th house saying, don't forget me, don't forget me. I'm the moon in your life. It's very unlike you as a Libra to forget your partner. But sometimes if we're focusing so much on things that are central to our future and the things we want to create and build and happen, we do sometimes perhaps not take our partner's needs and feelings into the situation. So that's the situation for Libra. When we look at Cancer, we've got the moon in the 10th house, the sun in the 4th house. So we're on that life direction axis, and it can mean one of two things. It either means that at this point, you're going to have to take a long look at the balance in your life, your work-life balance. What's happening here? Isn't it right? Well, you'll probably find out at this full moon, because certainly something tying into that powerful Pluto influence, especially if you have a birthday round about the 15th, 17th of July, something like that, then it really is a kind of crisis point. Are you doing too much so that other things are being left behind and not attended to? So there is this big sense of being split between two equally important aspects of your existence. Balance is what's needed here. And because Pluto is in that mix, and again, this is a general thing, with Pluto, we have to eliminate. We have to get rid of things we don't need. And I know that's hard for Cancerians because you're collectors. You love things, they're for their emotional value, their memories, but you know, this is a good opportunity to clear out in order to get the balance of life back. Now, there's a similar sort of message to Capricorn. For Capricorn, it's kind of different. We've got the sun in the 10th house and the moon in the 4th. So it's almost as though all your energies are pretty well out there on the world stage. You're busy building your role, whether that's a career or however you think about your social status. So there's a lot of energy being placed out there. But is that at the detriment of your home life, of your family, of the things that, you know, are close to home? Only you can decide that. But again, because Pluto's intersecting that full moon, we've got a crisis of some description around that time. Let's remember, Sun square Pluto on the 17th, Mars square Pluto on the 22nd. So let's give it a little bit of a wide berth and take it from about the 15th through to about the end of the month even. But of course, the big day itself is going to be the 20th. When we look at Gemini, we've got the full moon, the moon itself in the 11th house, and the sun on the in the 5th house. So this is what we call the creative axis. And often on a full moon, a gestation period is over. We've done the preparation. Everything's been building to this point, and now it's ready to deliver. And of course, for both Sagittarius and for Gemini, this idea of a birth of some description may be quite true. Maybe someone in the family is going to deliver a baby very soon, or maybe it's you yourself, or maybe you're about to think about adding to your family or starting a family. Gestation is in there somewhere. But of course, we can build a romance and grow it to a full-blown relationship. We can start a project, which maybe that did start in the April period. And what you're going to be doing here is it's ready to see how far it's gone. For Gemini, that moon is a lot about humanitarian issues as well. So maybe your instincts and your emotions are much more inclined towards the planet and other people and how you can help. Your emotions are with others, and you want to do something to help those who perhaps are in less positive circumstances. With Sagittarius, slightly more emphasis really on the whole idea of what you're bringing into creation. What are you created? Whether it's, creative, artsy kind of thing, or whether we're in the area of romances and things like that. But this is you, full solar time, getting in on the creative act. We then come to Pisces and Virgo. For Pisces, the moon in Aries, your next door neighbor sign, means you're in the area of finances and values. It's what are you worth? Now, of course, that might be a strictly practical matter. Maybe you've got a few sums to add up. Maybe you've got to fill out a few forms and figure out what is coming in and what's going out. So this full moon is a time of assessment, assessing what you have and therefore what you can do or not do with your finances. But it's also about how people treat you. And when people treat you as someone of value, my goodness, doesn't your self-esteem blossom? But sometimes we have to do that for ourselves. And we have to really think about the things that we know we've achieved and we know we do, and feel a sense of pride about those things. And that does boost our self-esteem. Now, for Virgo, the opposite sign, obviously we've got the moon in the 8th house, the sun in the 2nd house. So the accent is really a little bit more on what other people owe you, or what you do with your finances when you're with other people. That can mean banks and lending institutions, as well as partners, business partners, life partners. And because it's a full moon, it's a time of assessment. And so you say, is the balance right here? Am I getting, am I putting in too much and other people aren't giving me enough? Am I getting enough bang for my buck? So it is about all of that. And it's also about, I think, a little bit, because this is a complicated axis, the 2nd and 8th. It has a certain mystery about it as well. And it's where we feel we might lose something and we'll be completely lost, because it's the area of death and rebirth. But in a way, we have to lose everything to gain everything. And so that theme is playing long and loud at the time of this full moon. So we come to our final group and we come to Leo. Well, this full moon for Leo is in the 9th house. So is it about yearning for foreign shores? Do you long to get away from where you are? Well, think about that full moon squaring Pluto. It probably means you're going to move heaven and earth to get away. But the 9th house, of course, is also about knowledge and higher consciousness and seeking to expand our life horizons, our emotional horizons. And so that full moon brings things together to a point where you might say, it's now or never. I've got to do it or I'm not going to do it. Again, we've got the Pluto factor to take into consideration. So it is a point, I think, with every one of us, whatever our sun sign, let's think about what we have to drop, cut out, eliminate around the time of this full moon, because most of us has far too much stuff, most of us have far too many things going on in our lives, and we really do need to drop a few things. And that is the purpose, perhaps the biggest purpose of that full moon. If we come to the opposite sign and we look at Aquarius, we're in third house territory. So we're about finding your voice, using your voice, talking things through, making plans. What's going on in your neighborhood? Is this going to be an important time for hooking up with people who you feel are your brothers and your sisters? They may be for real brothers and sisters, but it's the idea of brothers and sisters in the broader context in the third house. So this full moon brings all of that into focus. And with Pluto in there as well, it means there may be an incident that causes you to think, wow, have I reached the end of some kind of project or relationship, in this sense of community and brotherhood, or, do things need to change so that we can continue? Final two, we look at now Scorpio and Taurus. Well, of course, for you, Scorpio, the sun is in your preceding sign. So the sun is moving through your 12th house, ready to pop out on the 23rd into your own sign. But for this full moon, it's still in the 12th house and the moon is in the 6th house. So for some reason, you're still in the shadows. And this full moon may illuminate something. So this full moon is about an epiphany. My goodness, now I understand. Now I get it. And of course, that can move mountains when we think about that. And with Pluto in the mix, maybe that's what's going to happen. We move mountains. But the other thing to remember is it's a time when we're more likely to be stressed and more vulnerable. So health always needs watching. Dental health, physical health, the health of mind, body, and spirit. That's really under this full moon. And to a certain extent, when we go to the opposite sign, Taurus, because the moon is in Aries, your preceding sign. So for you too, there's this message of getting health balance right, getting fitter and stronger and everything in balance. Nothing, all things in moderation is good for health. And this full moon is going to remind you of that. And if you've been doing too much of one thing, not doing your health any favors, then this full moon is probably going to really illuminate that. So a couple more things that I want to say about this full moon period. And that is that October is a month where a lot of planets that have been retrograde are turning direct. So there is a general feeling that a lot of things that have been in the sidings or sort of undecided or they're not coming together suddenly start to move. They might not complete. That might take a little while longer, but they're moving now. And you may notice that. You may even notice a shift, just as we sometimes do with sensitive individuals. We think, something's changed. I can feel it. And you may sense that during the course of this month. On the 18th, Jupiter turns direct, as does Mercury. So there's another two planets that start to make things much more, brings things into the arena so we can see what's going on. Often it's a bit of a confusing time because messages have, gone, or we've missed them. We've got mixed messages. We thought something was over and for some reason now it's back on. So it can be a little bit confusing, but it's still an important time. And I see that full moon on the 20th of October, the sandwich, I call it, with all that Pluto. I see that a lot of things for a lot of people, whatever your sun sign, whatever your chart, there's a sense of, oh, that's it. That's it. It's done. Everything we know now. There's a mighty kind of movement. Okay. And that sort of brings me rather neatly into my little kind of conclusion. And the quote that I picked for our video today is that many of life's failures are people who didn't realize that they were so close to success and give up. And that's by Thomas Edison, the man who invented, well, not just the light bulb, Mr. Electricity. And I think that's so true. And I see it so often with my clients that they contact me at a point where they think, I can't wait any longer for this situation. I think I'm giving up. And it's almost always at that point that it's going to turn. So I think there's a lot to be said if you get to that point where you think, okay, that's it, I'm done. And you don't mean it in a pity party sense where we always say it, oh, I've had enough of this. And 10 minutes later, we feel a little bit better. But it's when we really get to that point, I've spent all this time, I am done with this. And so this is what I'm going to do. And it's always at that point that something comes in. And I do want you to remember it and record it. But as I said, there's a big difference in just saying those words, in a kind of emotional way, just because you've had a hard day or you've got a ticket from a traffic warden. No, it's much deeper and more profound than that. And I think it suits this full moon squaring Pluto, this idea, you know what, I'm done. I'm going to shift my focus somewhere else. Magic. That's the moment. It's all going to start to come together. So thank you for watching, and take care. And I look forward to seeing you again on my next video in a couple of weeks' time. Bye for now.